Hello and welcome everyone to today's Fairygodboss live webinar. We're so excited to have you all join us, and we're going to give folks a few seconds to connect. While we're waiting though, we'd love to know where everyone's tuning in from. So on the right side of your screen, you'll see that there's a chat box. So if you feel comfortable in doing so, please send us a message in the chat saying, hey, let us know where you're joining from. Let's see, we've got some folks from Connecticut, Tulsa, Florida, lucky in the warmth. I'm coming in from New York City, so it's actually a beautiful day here today. I'm very grateful before it gets too cold. All right, so we've got people from all over. We can go ahead and get started. I'll first introduce myself. My name is Roxanne Parnell. I am a senior account executive at the Muse and Fairygodboss. And I do have a few quick announcements for us. So the session will be recorded and shared via email with all of the registrants. And during the discussion, we would, of course, love to hear from you. So we hope that you will use the stage chat, asking us questions and messages, comments to the panelists, to one another. And now I am excited to kick off the event, creating a highly engaged workforce with innovative learning and develop initiatives sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. And for those of you who do not know, Fairygodboss is the largest community for women. Millions of women are visiting Fairygodboss for career connections, jobs, community advice, hard to find intel about how companies are treating women, and virtual events like this. So we're thrilled to be joined today by two leaders at Navy Federal Credit Union, Janie Coots and Ritu Hudson. And I'd love for you each to take a minute to introduce yourselves. We'd love to hear what's going on in your life personally and professionally, and what you do in your role today at Navy Federal. So Ritu, we'll start with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. So my name is Ritu Hudson. I am a leader in Navy Federal's Human Resources Department, specifically Learning and Talent Development. In my current role, I lead the talent development team, which includes leadership and talent programs, as well as organizational development. I've been with Navy Federal now for over 14 years. And really during that time, I've had the opportunity to contribute to and support to enterprise strategy along the way, right? Which has been an absolutely amazing experience. My background is in instructional design and project management. It's a field I just kind of fell into after I did my undergrad degree, very luckily, because I love it. Outside of work, I spend a lot of time with my family, my husband, Scott, daughter, Madeline, my Siberian Husky, Guinevere, or Gwen, as well as just following some local sports, music, and reading and archery.
Wow, archery. That's cool. That's
It's pretty
amazing.
fun.
That's awesome. Thank you. Janie?
Well, hi, hello, and happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm Janie Coots, and I too am a leader at Navy Federal's HR division, where I lead the learning capability and solutions team alongside Ruthu here. I've been a member of the Navy Federal team for 18 years, most of which have been in the learning and development space. But I grew up in Hampshire, England. It's not as cool as archery, but I have the accent. So I grew up in Hampshire, England, but I have been in the United States for almost 20 years now. So,
wow.
And I'm currently living in Florida, which is starting to get a little cooler. So that I prefer that. The summers here last way too long. In my former life, I was in journalism and marketing. I have two teenage boys that are both, one is a senior in high school and one is about to graduate middle school and go to high school next year. So that's fun. They both play competitive baseball, which works out because I'm a huge baseball fan. And other than that, I enjoy stories, storytelling, books, all the books, preferably fiction, preferably in audio. And that's where you'll find me during my downtime for fun and relaxation, is getting lost in stories that aren't real.
It's a good escape, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. Honestly, I'm always so impressed when people are at organizations for as long as you both have been. I think it just truly speaks to the culture at an organization, and you clearly have a really good one that is keeping folks there and engaged. And so I'm really excited for this discussion today and to dive in a little bit more. And for those just tuning in, I'd like to remind everyone that we will be answering questions that come directly from all of you. So please submit them in the chat on the right side of your screen, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. So let's get into it. First up, I'd love to hear from Ritu how other female leaders have influenced your development at Navy Federal. And can you please also discuss some of the transformational work that you have led in the learning and development space?
Absolutely. So regarding your first question, I think that, and I'm going to speak for Janie too here, but of course she can speak for herself, but I think we're both pretty fortunate to have had some really strong female leaders that we've had the opportunity to work alongside and to also learn from. And that's whether it's on a project as a teammate or as a project lead, an official direct reporting relationship, or even as a mentor. So for me personally, in the time I've been at Navy Federal, I've had all three. And so that's been a really great experience and support for me and my career since I've been here. It's interesting because your second question actually ties perfectly into the first one for me, because it actually hits on a great example of this. One of the most transformational projects that I have had the opportunity to be a part of was leading an enterprise strategy initiative called People and Change Leadership. I can honestly say this was absolutely the most developmental project of my entire career. And I was given this opportunity by our CHRO, Holly Courtwright. So this effort was really this intentional focus on building our leadership capabilities, especially people leadership, helping people to, thrive in the environment, create that psychologically safe environment. So that was an amazing experience. Now, for this effort, just to tell you a little bit more about it, what we actually did was we created people leadership goals for all leaders across the entire organization. We did one at the enterprise level, right? And then all leaders had that. And then we did another goal that was tailored to each individual department, right? So we created also leadership development curriculum for that entire year, truly focusing on three key areas. So hybrid leadership, inclusivity and belonging, and creating a culture of connectedness, right? So with all the leaders really building the capability, developing together as one, we saw a marked commitment to this effort, and it's absolutely still remained intact today, I think. It was a pretty exciting to lead an effort like that for the organization, and very exciting that Holly was the one who brought me into it and assigned it to me.
Amazing. Janie, anything you want to add to that as well?
Yes, I do. And so in support of and in partnership with the transformational efforts that Ritu was talking about or just described, I led a project actually during the pandemic. And what we did is discover, design, develop, and then implement our organization's first corporate university, and which we is known today as, drumroll, Navy Federal's University. And so this was a huge effort, and it was transformational in the sense that, we have so much learning, events, courses, opportunities that we offer at Navy Federal, and it gave us that opportunity to bring it all together into academies and structure it in a way, in a space that gave our employees just an ease of finding what they were looking for by topic, by career goal. So that was an exciting transformation that was sort of happening at the same time as people and change leadership that Ritu described. And again, the sponsor for that particular effort was Holly Courtwright, our CHRO. And she was fairly new to the organization at that time, but incredibly supportive, enthusiastic when we said, hey, we want to build a corporate university. So she had a lot of influence on that, and Ritu as well. I have to give a shout out to Ritu as a leader, has been incredibly inspiring from my career journey and path as well.
I think that's amazing. Honestly, the idea of being able to navigate it easily as an employee and have access, companies can say we have these opportunities, but accessibility is huge, right? And having people be able to find exactly what they're looking for and kind of tailor it to themselves. It sounds, I mean, that's amazing. I think that's really great, the work that you're doing. And even Kim in the chat said culture of connectedness, which stands out to me as well. It's all about that human aspect, right? Like, we know we're here to work, but getting fulfillment from it too is something that I think, again, keeps people at organizations for as long as you both have been there too. All right.
Absolutely.
So we can move on to question 2, which is, so how have these L&D programs helped to successfully upskill employees at Navy Federal?
Well, Navy Federal is actively upskilling talent through different skill-based internal mobility programs embedded in our sort of talent acquisition. And this ranges from sort of formal rotations to finding ways literally to relocate military affiliated family members and spouses who've received deployment, or what we know as PCS orders, to another state, and in some cases country. So that isn't a formal program. However, it's a very real process that takes place often. And I myself, as a military spouse, have lived in 3 different states as a Navy Federal member, and that spanned over my 19-year career. So I think it's an incredible example of the investment that we make in our talent at Navy Federal. You know, just because you're PCSing, if you're moving to another place, we probably have a location there. So I think that really speaks so broadly at our internal mobility. And I think goal transparency is critical as well, to ensuring that we're deploying the right talent and resources to achieve success. And by focusing heavily, and we have been for a number of years, on upskilling our internal talent, we're creating this stronger workforce that can, you know, elevate their career and give them career trajectory while executing on a number of broad spectrum initiatives that, you know, and work. Like I said before, with the Navy Federal University, we've got so many resources and tools to upskill the enterprise, opportunities for, you know, various roles in leadership, analytics, you name it, we probably have it. Across these different academies that I mentioned earlier, we offer nano degrees and certifications, and we have over 2,000 upskill engagements that have just taken place in the last year or so. So,
wow.
Yes.
That's impressive. Awesome. Ritu, anything you want to add to that as well? I want to make sure I give opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll bring up another initiative I had the opportunity to work on, and it was really to help identify, onboard, and grow talent in the space of analytics, right? And that was in alignment with our overall data transformation effort that was going on throughout the entire organization. So we really focused on the specific skills. We identified proficiency levels, and then aligned them to learning paths in the university, like Janie is talking about, 2 specific proficiencies. We also developed interview guides and onboarding development, all to really support internal mobility, right? And that's a huge part of what we do at Navy Federal and how we support the organization. Another example of this is we have a program called TOP, or Talent Optimization Pipeline. It really takes employees from our front lines. It upskills them for new technology, data, security type roles. And what we've done here is, like, we actually have about 90%, it's a little over 90% of our top associates were previously in a member facing role and are now in our IT department, our security department. So really, like I mentioned, like, both of these are examples of how we focus on how we support internal mobility, because really at Navy Federal, honestly, we recognize that our talent fuels everything that we do, right? So we focus on providing the opportunities for people to grow with us.
That's great. 90%. That's like such a huge number. And the career trajectory and being able to make a change if you want, but not having to go outside. It's great for the company with retention, of course.
Exactly.
As the individual, keeping things as steady as possible in a moment of change, I think is so powerful. So I love this. You guys are doing a lot of great work. And I commend you on that. It sounds like your employees are also super engaged with it too, which speaks to the level at which you're implementing these programs. So what virtual learning tools or technologies have been particularly effective at Navy Federal to ensure engagement in virtual learning? And additionally, are there any in-person learning tools that you're using to ensure engagement during the in-person learning?
I'm going to go ahead and let Janie answer this one first, because she runs our fabulous learning solutions team, and I think she's got this answer.
Amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Ritu. I do have the first part of this answer, certainly as it relates to virtual learning. So for us at Navy Federal, it was back in 2010, actually, that we realized that we needed to be able to be more scalable, and we needed to reach our employees that were overseas, were in what we call the field, that weren't located at one of our main sort of campus locations. We're all over the world. And so we started to really look at what it means to deliver the same quality learning virtually as we would in person. And we spent a lot of time and effort and resources on converting our content to make sure that it was could be successful, whether it's delivered in person or virtually, and looking at the different platforms that we could use for that engagement, as well as really digging into the science of virtual delivery, what is happening right now, so that it wasn't dry or boring, and that we could have interaction and engagement. So it was very, very successful for us. And today, we still boast 100% curricula that can be delivered in person, face-to-face, or virtually as well. And I think Navy Federal University helps with that. Just to mention that Navy Federal University one more time, but with that one-stop shop there. But Navy Federal is employee powered, and our team members are the key to our success. Not just a small percentage of them, the entire workforce, and we serve our members by attracting the best talent that we can and offering these different learning opportunities virtually and in person. But I think one other thing that I'll add is right now we're like most organizations, we're looking at other technologies, AI-based technologies and ChatGPT and other ways that we can sort of support the development of learning and other tools that we can use. We're not there yet, like most, but we're definitely exploring and we'll continue in that space. Ritu, what were you going to add to that?
So I'll just add in like some of the considerations that we have behind the scenes, right? So one thing we have to consider is the curiosity that this generation has, right? So I can't see hands, but does anyone in here have a kid in high school? I do, right? And let me tell you, don't look at their school laptops browsing history unless you are sitting down and prepared for it, because they're used to getting some information that they want it. They're going to go for it right now, right in the spot. So a really quick example, and this is very recent. I was checking out my daughter's browsing history. I could see very specifically she's sitting in math class, and she needed to know what Times Square looked like when it was empty, what the tingling in her foot was, and why her ears were ringing, but only every 7 minutes, right? And so these are serious, for real examples of searches that she ran while she's sitting in math class paying perfect attention, right? And she had to know the answer immediately. And that was all within a couple of minutes. So aside, we had a great conversation that evening. But the point really here is that there is this genuine need to nurture that curiosity, but also to kind of help focus it. And I think some of the science-backed engagement tools and tactics like microlearning is a critical aspect of that. Additionally, one of the items that Janie talked about was the virtualization. And that was around 2017, I think, Janie, is when we went through this massive effort to, we called it virtualize all of our content. So we had all that instructor-led content, we had e-learning courses, but we wanted to make sure we could reach all employees in the organization and really focus on having, like Janie said, like this, right? Where you can have that live interaction, but from different locations. And I think one of the neat things is that we had the foresight to do that. That was pre-pandemic. So going into the pandemic, we were prepared. No matter what location you were in, development was still a top priority at Navy Federal, which was, I think, was a pretty neat thing.
Janie, so, I'm sorry. Were you going to add something?
No,
Oh,
I
okay,
wasn't.
okay, got it. I want to just comment though on that point you just made, Ritu, about being prepared, right? You guys started the virtual learning in 2010, a decade, years before something like the pandemic happened. So I can imagine that transition for your employees in such a stressful time was so much smoother. And to my point earlier about, kind of controlling what you can and keeping as much as you can stable, that I can only imagine was something that your employees found a ton of value in.
Absolutely.
So can you share any other best practices for other organizations who are looking to emulate these learning and development initiatives in their own workforces?
I think what we've described, and I'm looking at some of the questions and things coming in, but I think what we're describing, we are a large organization, and Ritu talked about that foresight that we had, but we recognize that not every organizational business has that same amount of resources or size. But I think for me, it's about just really knowing your employees, who they are, what they need. And one of the things that's always benefited us is always beginning with a capability, some sort of capability or competency framework. If that's something that, another business hasn't thought of yet or hasn't done yet, that's a great place to start. Once you know the skills that you need to be successful in your business, that lays a perfect foundation for saying, okay, what are our priorities? Where do we need to focus our efforts? And even if you had smaller curriculums, you don't have to have a big corporate university, but if you had pathways that help build on skills in key roles, that would be advice I would give. I think that would be a place to start, is, know what those capabilities are, know your people and what they need and what you need as a business to grow and evolve.
I'll just add a quick note to that. So one of the things Janie's talking about, like, know me, show me, do it for me, is kind of this mantra that Mary McDuffie has instilled in our culture, right? And there's another one, do, learn, grow, which helps each of us really focus on having that growth mindset, because a mistake is an opportunity to learn and to iterate, right? So this, I don't know, a tagline, this mantra, this like way of thinking, it's used throughout communication in our organization, right? It can be in presentations, it can be in what people talk about. And I'll tell you honestly, like every day in conversation, it pops up in some discussion somewhere. And this really came from the top, right? So this came from Mary and our senior executive leadership team. So I think one of the suggestions I would add is to really engage your executive leadership in your goals and your values for talent development, right? So they are absolutely a part of the process as our focus evolves. Our executive leaders are very engaged in all kinds of talent strategies that we have in our organization, focusing on building trust from that top leadership so that team members are empowered to do their jobs well, I think is an excellent thing. So like with know me, show me, do it for me, and the do, learn, grow, with those being infused in our culture, it really enables us to do our talent work and really encourage our team members to focus on their development, utilizing what we offer in LNTD.
That whole mantras piece, right? And the consistency, and you said infused, and I love that word to because I think from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it truly is, companies can have core values, right? And they can say that this is their thing, but having it from like onboarding and through the life cycle of talent is something that makes a difference in practice what you preach, right? Walk the walk. So thank you both so much for sharing those best practices. And Janie, it sounds like you actually answered one of the questions that came in with suggestions and advice for folks who might not have something like a full-blown university in place.
Right.
But let's get into some others. We've got a couple that have come in that I'd love to start with. So Faye asked, can Ritu provide an example of what an enterprise level people leadership goal?
Absolutely. I'm going to butcher the wording here, but I can tell you trust and collaboration, building that environment where your team members are able to have candid conversations, where leaders are listening actively to them, where they feel empowered in their decision making. Those are all key elements that we focused on at that point and still continue to focus on at an organizational level.
Can I add to that too, Ritu, because it's people leadership. That has been something we have, started with the initiative that Ritu has described today, but we've spent more time talking about it this year. Next year, it's going to be, again, another strong focus for us is we need good people leaders and have goals that are structured around the capabilities of being a good people leader, knowing our employees and that relationship. I know that question for you, Ritu, sorry.
We love all perspectives. I mean, you both even mentioned Holly, I believe your CHRO, and clearly she's had an impact. And you're right. A lot of it is going to come from the top down and just making sure, I'm going to steal your word, Ritu, and use infusing that leadership and those setting by example, really make a difference. Okay, so Janie, you had answered Renee's question about the best practices or advice. So we have one more from Faye. Do you have any advice for how to motivate people to expand their skills when they may not be feeling that they need to? That's a great question.
It is. There's numerous ways that we can answer this. I don't think it's just one way. Right. Because again, it depends on the employee, it depends on the circumstance. But for me, I think, and one of the things that we have in our culture is this culture of continuous learning, right? Again, it's infused into our vernacular, into the way that we lead employees and sort of engage with our employees. There's not really a destination. Learning is sort of this lifelong process. And so that helps to infuse that into the culture. I think knowing your learners, because not every learner wants to learn in the same sort of way. And so maybe in this situation, Faye, it might be that they just don't see the relevance. And I think we've all got responsibility as leaders to talk about how important it is to stay relevant in your role and for the future of the organization. But I think it may be that they don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's not the learning isn't something that they connect with. So I think having different opportunities, options, different ways to learn, micro learning, virtual learning, it just depends on the individual. But connecting the reason, the purpose of with the organization's purpose is what I'm trying to say here, right? Connecting the reason why we all need to stay relevant and continue to grow with the organization's mission and vision, I think is important, and keeping that alive in conversation with all employees as well. Ritu, would you add anything to that? Probably.
I was going to say, I think that do, learn, grow mantra is a huge part of it. Like I said, that's coming from Mary. That's from our CEO. Throughout the organization, right. People are talking about this nonstop. And then I think as leaders, we have a responsibility. It's part of being a people leader to role model this, to have those developmental conversations, but to show people that we have development plans too, right? Like I'm constantly working on things as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you for the questions so far. Let's get back into our discussion and continue going along. So how do you ensure that the L&D programs you implement are responsive to the evolving needs of the workforce, especially in a rapidly changing business environment?
I mentioned that we are consistently trying to remain sort of flexible and scalable. We have to, the size of our organization and just the geographical locations of our employees, to serve this hybrid workforce. And we're fully on board with a full hybrid workforce, which means that some folks are coming to campus every day, some days a week. We have this flexibility built in. So we want to make sure we can reach them, first of all, wherever they are. And we have a highly collaborative workforce. The way that we approach learning or solving for a learning gap is pretty unique horizontally. And I'll explain a little bit about how that works. We have a business partner model within human resources that stay connected with senior leaders across the business and are constantly having these conversations around what do you need, looking at the health, the organizational health of and the employee health of each business unit. And I think that has helped us tremendously, because we get to receive that information to say, okay, in this particular business unit, here are some of the gaps that some of the executive leaders are seeing, some of the other leaders. We're able to go in and analyze those gaps collaboratively and work with different SMEs within HR, within the business unit, within the technical training areas as well, to come together to say, okay, this is what we need, and to attach measurement to that, to see if we were effective as well.
I would just add real quick, we also, so the HR business partner model that Janie mentioned, we have a very strong collaborative relationship in LNTD with them, of course, right, as we're supporting the business. And one of the things that we're doing is we are creating business unit development plans, and we're still continuing to refine this process. But what we're doing is we're looking at data. So items like the engagement survey, strategic goals, leadership goals that maybe a department has, but really looking at it by business unit, but also across the organization for those trends, right? And so ultimately, this really helps us make data-driven decisions on what we need to drive in the organization, as well as what we need to support, what we need to tailor or customize. And it goes back to exactly how Janie ended. It goes back to how we can be able to evaluate and analyze the impact that we're having on the org.
I think the data is everything, right? Being able to make data-driven decisions. It's like and these emotional parts of it, of growth and development, and kind of combining that into this perfect solution or formula is clearly, again, what has made you guys so successful with your programs. I want to also ask, how have you found your own passion and purpose and voice at work? And how do you elevate others' voice around you? Feel free.
You want to go first? You want me to? Okay.
Go for it.
I can. So for me, it's been about the opportunities. There are opportunities from day one coming to Navy Federal, and being a part of an organization that supports who I am as the whole person, not just an employee number, not just because of what was on my resume or what it is that I can or cannot do. It's who I am that they invested in as a military spouse. We're retired now. Luckily, we get to stay in Florida, not move around, although I miss it. But still, that kind of investment, that helped unlock a lot of my passion, and to be able to try to give back myself. And I do that in a couple of ways. And I think that's why I am so passionate about learning, is because I had those opportunities and I had those great leaders. We talked about Holly and Mary, and there have been many others throughout my career here. So that helped to unlock a lot of my passion and purpose. And in terms of elevating voices around me, the number one rule for me as a leader is that it's not about me. It's about them. It's about having that relationship and cultivating an environment where they can feel comfortable speaking freely about their ideas, about their concerns, challenges they're having. And I like to think that that's the environment that I want to maintain and do maintain with my team members, so that, because they are the ones that are doing the job, they're the ones that are doing the work. And so I want to be able to represent their voices, their ideas, and make their career goals possible for them as well.
I love that. It sounds so personal to you too, right? And I think that's where the passion comes from. Ritu, I'd love to hear if you have something to share too.
Absolutely. So I totally agree with Janie. It's about the opportunities, right? So I love that I have the opportunity to lead work that I am excited about, can have a lasting impact on the organization as well. So I like knowing that I'm doing work that ultimately helps our employees, which ultimately helps our members, right? Along with those opportunities, I think a key part for me is that it comes with trust and empowerment. If Holly's not on here, her ears are going to be burning because I'm going to mention her name again. So as a quick example, with People and Change Leadership, that initiative that I mentioned early on, I remember a meeting early on I had with Holly. So I was the lead, but she was the goal owner. And I asked for approval. I went into her office. I had all my notes. I had like piles of notes. I had slides. I had all this information with me, right? And I asked for approval on something that was not very large, something pretty small. And she just looked at me and she goes, I trust you. You're empowered to make the right decision here. And that meant so much, just hearing that right there from her. And without that opportunity and trust, that would not have been such a developmental project in my career, right? And I think about that moment often. So, like for example, when I'm working with my leaders and setting kind of the guardrails for decision making and empowerment, like that's what I think of. I think back to that moment.
I love this. Is like words like trust and respect and nurturing are coming up a lot. Janie, I think you were going to add something before I move on, but please.
May I? Okay.
Yes.
That was really obvious. I try to be very subtle, but
that's okay.
It's reinforcing this idea of empowerment. You know, empowerment isn't something that you just give to someone. You're empowered, go forth. It's this feeling as an employee that I am trusted. I have the skills and the knowledge, and my leader trusts me to make a good decision, come up with a good idea and a solution, and try it. And I tell you, the other thing that we have at Navy Federal, I think that I'm very proud of, that I try to support, that comes from the top levels, is failure is okay. It's okay to fail. How can we grow? How can we learn if we never failed at something? And so being in this environment where you're trusted, empowered to make a decision, fully entrusted, to Rithu's point, but also that you can try something and it's okay if it doesn't work out the first go around. So that's just made me think of that, Rithu, when you were talking about Holly empowering you. I can.
And that goes right back to do, learn, grow, right? Try it out. Maybe it doesn't go as planned, but you learn from it, you iterate, and you try it again in a different way, and it comes out better every single time.
Failure is an inevitable part of learning and development, right? You can only get better if you failed, and you have to try again. And that's where so much growth does come from. And this is all actually a perfect segue into my next question, which is I want to chat a little bit about Navy Federal's work culture and hear from both of you on what your favorite aspect is about working at the company and how do they help you succeed. And Ritu, do you want to start with this one?
Sure, I'll jump in. So I'm sure you've seen all the commercials at Navy Federal. Our members are the mission. And this is absolutely true. I can tell you this. We are definitely a member first, people always organization. We're focused on being employee powered. We're focused on being member centric. I will let Janie talk about the member centric. As she's mentioned, she's got a family, a military family that she is a part of. So she's got a huge connection there. So we definitely put members and team members first, because we believe that, and I think I already kind of mentioned this, but when employees are well taken care of, our members are too, right? So Navy Federal is about opportunities like we talked about. It's about growth and development. It's about internal mobility. It's about how we can upskill our team members and help them get to where they want to be in the organization in an inclusive environment, right? So I think Janie and I are both lucky really to be in roles where we actually help enable that for Navy Federal employees.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's this feeling of family. We hear it a lot. We hear it from our employees, but we hear it from our members too. As a military spouse, I'll scoot back to my early years of marriage. And, my husband literally, he was active duty Navy. He literally had his emergency contact was like mom, dad, Navy Federal. I might have been like number 4 or something there, but, and they do. Our members feel that way. Our military affiliated members do feel that way, that Navy Federal is there for them throughout their life, right? If you think about joining the military and going through A school and getting your first accounts and perhaps getting your first loan, your first vehicle, and then, maybe marriage or buying a home, or all the way through from to retirement. And that's how we feel about our employees. That is emulated, mirrored in our culture. And I can speak at that firsthand, being a military spouse. And Navy Federal has been with me professionally and personally through all of those life choices. So yeah, that's our culture. That's our secret sauce is just we invest in people, whether our members, our customers, our employees, first and always.
It's so powerful too to have your own personal experience in that, and I think it just kind of further solidifies and validates what we're talking about today and what your experiences are. So thank you both so much for shedding light there. So at Fairygodboss, we have a tradition of asking our panelists the following. So what we have observed is that women do not feel comfortable enough bragging or taking ownership of all of the amazing things that they achieve. And so I'd love for you to share with us an accomplishment, whether it's personal or professional, that you're most proud of. Janie, you can kick it off for us.
I will kick it off. For me, that I'm most proud of, I could speak about a lot of projects and things, but it's probably the way that I've seen my sons describe me to their friends and to and in school. Just last week, my oldest teenager said to me, hey, when I'm looking for my future partner, I want her to be like you. You've managed to have a successful career, be a good mom. And he remembers the days when I did that by myself, when my husband was deployed. And so that's my greatest achievement as a professional, as a mother, as a woman, is to know that I did both. I've been able to have it all, and my kids can see it, and they're proud of it and proud to talk about it. So bit heartfelt there, but that's my proudest. That's my brag.
Thank you for sharing that. Ritu.
So I would agree. I could definitely professionally talk about all of the teams I've been a part of, all the wonderful impact that we have made as teams for Navy Federal and supporting different strategic initiatives or day-to-day work. I'd say personally, I am most proud of being a mom and having a career, right? So my daughter is absolutely the most important aspect of my entire life, right? I also love what I get to do at Navy Federal every single day, though, right? So I am grateful that I have the flexibility to be able to do both. Random quick example again, just this morning, she had a very important doctor's appointment that she needed to go to, and she was like, Mom, I really don't want Dad to take me to this. This is not where I want Dad to be. So, I was able to take the time and be with her when she needed me, right? And through me and our conversations, she gets to see what it's like to have the best of both worlds, because I feel like I do really have that. And through, just talking about work and hearing work stories, all fabulous work stories, she's also learning to be an adult and kind of almost a professional. So for example, and remember, we live in the learning and talent development world. So sometimes rather than rolling her eyes, as she often does, she'll say, Mom, would you be open to some feedback? And I can tell you, coming from a 15-year-old, those words spark both fear and pride every single time I hear them. But there's that moment of just being proud of, wow, you are maturing and you are becoming an adult.
Wow. I wish I would have had that in my arsenal at 15 years old. I wonder how my parents would have responded to it.
There's definitely still some eye rolling. I don't want to give the indication that is how every conversation goes.
probably rolling her eyes as she asks that question. I love it. These are both such powerful stories, and you're clearly both such great examples for your children and them being able to take that for themselves and their own growth and development, share with their own friends too. Women are amazing, truly. I mean, of course I'm biased, but, and also another thing I've noticed throughout this conversation is how many women are in leadership at your company. And it's just something that I'm proud of as a woman to even see that and feel it and be around it. We have a lot of women in leadership at our organization as well. And it's something that it's so close to my heart. And we need more women in leadership. So we got to keep fighting the fight. All right. So a couple more questions from the audience. I see I've got one here. What opportunities are available for employees to seek mentorship or coaching within the organization? And how does HR support these mentoring relationships?
I can go ahead and jump in on this one.
Great.
So we absolutely support both mentoring and coaching within the organization. And I think one thing that is important to recognize is it doesn't always have to be a formal program or a formal relationship, right? So mentoring, we have some like best practices and guidelines on how to establish that relationship, how to go about finding a mentor that aligns, that how to start the conversation. And that is helpful, and that is such a great resource to have in people's hands, because it doesn't necessarily need to be a formal program. Coaching, same thing. It can go both ways. And there are so many different types of coaching, right? There's executive coaching, there's peer coaching, there's leaders helping our leaders be coaches to their employees as well. So I think it's the recognition that coaching and mentoring happen in many different capacities, and supporting our employees and being able to do that.
That's great. Mentorship is everything, right? And setting by example. Again, do, learn, grow, right? I hope I got it right. And being able to, right? Do, learn, grow. And being able to have that available for folks. Janie, anything you want to add? I have a couple more questions to get to, but I would love to give you an opportunity if you have something. Okay.
No, let's roll on to the next one.
All right, great.
Nailed that.
So we spoke about too, I mean, both working mothers and balancing both the professional and the personal. So that sparks a question of, what's your go-to stress relief activity or routine when balancing so much?
Do you want me to start? So you can probably guess the answer here is archery.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, we want to hear stories.
And I've said this before, but it is, and not in a bad way, but I don't really turn my work brain off very often. Like, I'm constantly thinking about work, and it's all because it's exciting stuff, or it's an idea, or an idea that I'm like, oh, I got to bounce this by Janie in the morning or something like that, right? But when I am, and I'm part of an archery team, when I'm doing it, it's like this like complete focus on the target, on that center dot, right? And I can zone everything else out. And one of my archery coaches once said, he goes, some people find archery very, very meditative. And that makes perfect sense to me. I think it really is. But that is my way to just like zone out, and just kind of, almost like Janie's talked about, like the books to escape. And I love reading too, but that's my way to just close out the rest and focus on me.
I could totally see how that would be meditative, right? Because you're forced to silence the rest of it, which can be really hard. I also struggle with the whole thinking about work all the time, and finding you have to really be intentional about kind of taking the pause and stepping away. Janie, I imagine that reading is part of this de-stress activity. Is there anything else though that is kind of a go-to for you?
Well, yes. I mean, it goes beyond it. I think it's imagination for me, right? So I take Rithu's archery, and in my mind, she becomes like Robin Hood. It's that escapism. Everything with me gets added into a story. So daydreaming is pretty therapeutic for me. I make up a lot of my best stories. I like to write. I like to create. And that will lend itself into home improvements as well. So I'm definitely a dab hand at doing those kinds of things. That's relaxing to me. I like to listen to audiobooks while doing those creative activities. But I'm also a bit of a bourbon enthusiast too. I collect some nice, but yes. So I don't know if that's okay to say, but so that's relaxing, a sip of bourbon.
Absolutely.
Well, home improvement's probably not with the bourbon, but certainly.
Maybe the hammer and the drill. That's awesome. I would love to read anything. I am a big storyteller and story person myself, so it's always nice. And for me, like journaling, my friend and I were joking recently about like I kind of write in my journal as if someone's going to read it. I don't know if I have this fantasy of if I ever have children one day and they want to look back and know who I was, but to me it's super therapeutic to be able to almost put my experience into a story and just get it out there, and then close the book and walk away and feel lighter, hopefully, from what I've written. All right, so within your industry, I'd love to hear like what advice would you give to someone who's new or trying to break into the industry? And either of you can start with this if you both would like to answer.
You want to go ahead?
What advice would I give? I'll go ahead. So I guess it's the same advice that I always give to my children, to my employees. And it's something that I've always told myself. It's pretty simple. It's you be interested. So be curious, be interested, and be interesting. And the way that, being curious, finding out what's out there, what's to offer, having conversations, making networks, and then being interesting is just continuing to grow, continuing to look for ways to improve or just develop or just try something new. Not every skill build is about a gap. Sometimes it's just about trying something new and learning if it's something that you like or not. So for me, it's, be curious, be interested, and be interesting as best you can.
I think that's also right on the nose for today's conversation, right? It's learn. I'm going to say it again. What is it? Do learn, grow. And that can go so far outside of just work. But yeah, Ritu, anything that you would like to add about kind of new and advice to breaking into the industry?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Janie is saying. So for me, it's like learn, network, gain perspective, right? Every person you talk to, every interaction you have, I think of it as an opportunity to learn something new, right? Learning their perspective, their thoughts, their ideas on things. That is something that, maybe 3 hours later, you're thinking about something and it kind of gets back in your head and it shifts how you may think about things as well. So I think that's a huge part of it for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for adding that. How do you think about making sure your teams feel well supported in their lives, both in and out of the office? Work-life balance is such a topic, especially for candidates too. We found in research that it is one of the top priorities that people have now is work-life balance. So what are you all doing to support that?
Can I start? Should I start? Well, this is another major focus for us, and it comes back to that people leadership. And literally, and I don't know if my boss is here today. If Mike is here today, I'm gonna tell on him, but in a good way. So, we have our senior leaders are very deliberate and very intentional around work-life balance and what that really means. I had a one-on-one with my boss just last weekend, and that was his feedback to me. Is, your work-life balance could be a little better. I see you. I mean, of all the things that we could talk about, he was just most concerned that, I'm getting, I love what I do and I'm passionate, but, there's a time where you need to leave and it will all be there tomorrow. It's not, again, it's one of those things. It's not just lip service for our organization. It's meant. And so I've been known to gently persuade my employees to leave if they're not feeling well. They don't need to be here. It'll all be here tomorrow. So I had that story about Mike, Ritu, so I wanted to get that in, because literally that was the feedback that I just got as a reminder to take care of you, because of course if we don't take care of ourselves, we're no good. We can't get the work done. So
No, I think that's a great example you gave too, and I'll pick on Mike as well. So and this demonstrates like people leadership, because I think at the core of it, it's about, you know, knowing your employees, having that trusted relationship with them so that they can be candid, whether it's work or not work related, right? Having that candid dialogue, looking at them as a whole person, that supports you, and that's all of you, not just the you at work, right? And I very much have that with Mike too. You know, it's constantly, hey, how's your grandmother doing, right? Knowing that there's some illness going on there. You know, it's that extra question that starts the conversation before like getting into status updates or getting into something that's work related. It's it's letting your team members know that you truly care about them.
It's so true. It goes so far, right? You know, I've worked in cultures where having leadership tell me that I need to implement more balance into my work life. That has not been an experience that I've had in all places. And I think it just does go so far to even have people led, you know, from leadership, the top down, implementing and really believing and supporting these ideas around work life balance, practicing it themselves, ensuring that other leaders and every level of employee is really has access to that and supporting it. It just goes so far, and we can only show up as our best selves if we're taking care of ourselves outside of the office. Let me make sure. Okay. So one of my favorite questions to ask is, what advice would you give your younger self?
I can go ahead and jump in, Janie. Okay, so this is probably going to sound a bit corny, but I would really tell myself that it's okay to pursue what makes you happy, right? It doesn't necessarily make you selfish to pursue that. Um, Sometimes you have to major in that degree that no one wanted you to. For me, that was English, not an IT field, right? Sometimes you have to take a chance and apply for that job, even if it's not exactly what you want, but it gets you closer to where you want to be. Prior to coming to Navy Federal, I was in a leadership position, but I recognized that joining an organization like Navy Federal could support my career long term. And I joined in an individual contributor position, knowing that I wanted to ultimately get back into leadership. Um, I came with the intention that I wanted to grow with the organization. So I'm grateful I did a lot of that in early in my career, but I would really tell myself that it's okay to do those things, and there shouldn't be any guilt associated with wanting to be happy.
Yep. Great advice, and fully support that as well. Janie, your turn.
It's similar. I think for me, I had a lot of, obviously I've talked about my creativity, a lot of passion, a lot of creativity, and in an earlier career that was sort of stifled a little bit. I had leaders and those around me that, you know, felt some of my ideas were off, a little bit off the wall. And so I stopped offering them. And now, you know, with the help of some of the great leaders and the environment we have at Navy Federal, I definitely am not shy about doing that. And so I would tell myself that, like, share it anyway. What's the worst that can happen if you have a good idea? You know, sometimes you sort of have to break the rules, break the mold, not break the rules, but break the mold. And try something radical. Some of my greatest successes at Navy Federal have been from radical thinking and doing something that maybe I wasn't quite asked to do, but it worked out in the end, you know. And so I think you have to be authentic and true to, if you've got an idea, if you've got something that you want to speak out and speak up, then do it. I would tell myself that.
I have to plus one that. Like, one of the biggest, like, my dad growing up was always told me, never be afraid to ask. The worst they can say is no. And that is I'm in sales. That has carried me through even my career. It's carried me through in personal situations of, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, but they could also say yes to the idea or to the question. And sometimes you just got to take the risk. And I think I would also go back and tell my younger self to keep doing it and don't be afraid. This has been such a pleasure. I am so grateful for both of you for sharing with us, for sharing with me, and for your time, both Janie and Ritu. And also, thanks to everyone who tuned in and who came today and asked questions and engaged in the chat. As a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of today's event along with all of the resources to learn more about opportunities at Navy Federal. And in the meantime, be sure to check out Navy Federal's profile on and jobs, of course, on Fairygodboss. This has been amazing. We are going to wrap it up now. We would also love any feedback that the attendees have. We are always open to ways that we can improve, or just hearing, if you really loved the experience. There is some information about that. There's a link in the chat for it. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Ritu and Janie, and thank you, Navy Federal. We will talk again soon, I hope. And that's all we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.